We're going to be talking about Choosing Children, which is a show we did where we incorporated digital access. So I'll tell you a little bit about us. I'm the producer for Choosing Children. This is Ben, he's the artistic director. And we are an interdisciplinary creative group working in interactive theatre, virtual reality and moving image. Our work explores interactive narratives and how they can create powerful, immersive experience that allow the viewer to have deep engagement with the work and its ideas. And then Choosing Children asks the audience to explore one of the most challenging dilemmas of our time. To what extent should new reproductive technologies impact the type of children we have in the future? And what might this do for the life chances of the next generation of disabled people? So we'll show you a trailer.
We have a problem.
The very knowledge of genetics began to shape and change the way we think. A power both awesome and terrifying.
Could you ever imagine using genetic engineering to change your unborn child?
Would you want somebody to know all about you? Your history, your potential?
Why take the risk? Surely it's better to ensure they cannot happen in the first place.
Do you want to remove genes from your child that could potentially pose them a risk in the future?
Previously, more often than not, the only option was abortion. But now, we could just change the child.
So this was an interactive experience exploring genetic engineering impact on disabled people. And we built an innovative access system using mobile technology to integrate BSL, audio description and captioning in every performance, with the hope to widen participation and improve access for audiences. We worked with a diverse group of artists and consultants with lived experience, and it was our aim from the outset to make this show accessible to everybody. But yeah, I think we'll go over to you now to talk a little bit more about the access features.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just going to quickly talk through what access features we had in there and how we delivered them. So this, in the show we had captioning, which is delivered by this mobile phone application. We had British Sign Language, same, and then...
In the middle of the room are a series of unlit orbs. The space goes dark. A hooded person wearing a cloak enters from the right of the stage.
That's audio description, right? That came really quick, didn't I? I didn't expect that. So basically just trying to explain a little bit about how we put the access in and, you know, what technologies we're using behind it. So we were using mobile phone technology basically to deliver an app which sent the information on a queuing system to the mobile, which allowed it to have audio description and caption and BSL, which was like basically queued into certain sections. So each bit was split into a certain amount, a chunk of time, and that would be queued on a system, which we were using a Mad Mapper for that. So I'm just going to quickly put up the list of software for those that are really interested in that. So we used that traditional sort of lighting software that you get in theatre. We were using initially, we started off using the Unreal Engine, which is the a games engine. And then we used a Mad Mapper, which is another type of video mapping software. All of this is kind of working on a network, which is sending these OSC basically signals to each other to tell it when the cue is finished. So in this image, it looks like me, so I must have done some work. So basically, just to talk a little bit about the show itself. So you've got 20 mobile phones which are running this application that we built for it, and they're basically directly interacting with one of the orbs in the show, which is, you get a series of questions in this, because the idea was about trying to explore and like critically analyze the idea of genetic engineering, what it might mean. And so you've got these questions you could use to try and explain that. And in each headset, you've got over-ear headphones, which runners use. So the brand that you can use, Aftershock, a lot of people use. And so we built into the creative process the idea that you would have to wear these headphones. So we were writing script which delivered some of the speech directly through the headphones, some of the speech through the live actor, and therefore it didn't feel odd that certain people had headphones on and some people didn't. Everybody wore headphones and everyone used them. They just got different information, and in the earlier slide we showed, at the beginning they would be able to choose what their access requirements were, as long as it was within those small boundaries of captions, audio descriptions, and BSL. And in there, just trying to highlight a couple of the challenges that we came up against in using this sort of system was that because we were working with a live actor, that it's not mechanical in the sense that it was never always timed exactly how it, how we rehearsed it or anything like that. So that's where the queuing system picked up, where there was different stages we need to do. But if it ended up being wildly out, there's no way we could correct it. So the queuing system only could do its length of time, of whatever the amount of time the access thing was, or amount of captionings, 30 seconds of captioning, 30 seconds of BSL. If we went too quick beyond that, we would never get back on time. That person would lose a little bit.
Bearing in mind the show's an hour, so the actor had an hour. There's one live actor, so they had an hour's worth of dialogue. Well, not quite, because you can't really see them on there, but there's 10 avatars on the back screen, which the actor converses with as well. So they did have some breaks where they didn't have to talk, but they still had to stay really focused because that was their cues, the actors, or we had lighting cues as well for them as well, didn't we?
Yeah, so a lot of cues, a lot of rehearsal to try and make sure that we get the cues right and built into the show. One of the things that we had was that as soon as we'd got to the end of our rehearsal and we'd locked the show, we couldn't change it again. So that was because we pre-recorded all the BSL and all the captioning. So as soon as we'd got to the end of rehearsal, that was the end, and we'd go and make the show. And the show would have to be that way, and it wouldn't evolve again from there. That's mainly a budget issue, because we couldn't go back and re-record all the BSL. There's some very specific things in there about where we'd the technology that we were using was all off a mobile phone. And so what happens was you'd have a mobile phone right in front of you, and that would have all your access in. So if you're using audio description, it doesn't really matter, because you've got, you're not using a different perspective. But if you've got captioning and you've got a mobile phone in front of you, you're looking at this mobile phone instead of looking at the live actor. So there's a lot of considerations behind delivering this access about which were all to do with like artistic decisions versus access decisions. And just a little bit about why we did it, just to say like, one of the things, because we were talking about this subject about genetic engineering, it was important to try and connect with different audiences that it would affect. And that meant us trying to integrate as much access as possible from the outset. And also we wanted the show to be accessible all the time, so we didn't want to just do one BSL show in the run of the tour. We wanted to make sure that you could go and turn up to any show and you could go and sit next to someone who's using captioning, or you could sit next to someone who's doing audio description. It wasn't you had to go to a specific show. So every of the performances we did have this technology in it. And, you know, we had to make some compromises in the original vision, but also it made the show a lot better in some cases. Like, we thought about a lot of things that we wouldn't have integrated before, and it allowed us to try and have this interactivity that we wanted within the show. And again, like I say, we just tried to make something that was as accessible as we could make it at that time. So it wasn't perfect, and there's loads of learning that we've had come out of that, but we wanted to make sure that within the knowledge that we had and the team around us and the people we brought in, we tried to make it, you know, fit the access as best as possible. I'm whipping through this because so now some just a bit of tips of the stuff that we'd learned, which was just like to plan the access in early, and part of that was about a lot of creative decisions that we have to make about trying to make the show work, and means that at some point you have to, there's a cut-off point between how accessible you can make it with an vision, and you just have to accept that it can't be accessible to everyone, even though we might say it occasionally. That generally is like impossible, and the quicker you embrace that, the better. And also I think that the conversations around access that we're trying to have are probably, you know, have to be acknowledged that kind of, at least we're talking about access. Some people don't talk about access. It's just like one performance in a run. But we're kind of aware that because we've got like this learnt experience, that there is a lot of things we can share, and also there's a lot of technical problems that most people will face if they try and do a similar thing. And I think like what we've learned is that it is about a long process to try and bring people in. So like when the actors came in, they changed parts of the script, they changed how we were going to do the performance, and that kind of evolved all the time up until the point we kind of had our tech deadline, which was, we've got to take this on tour now and we can't make any more changes. And then obviously when you're on the run, you go and you find 1,000 things you'd want to change, of which, as Laura's a great producer, would say, you cannot make any changes now because you don't have the budget. And I'd just sit there thinking and cry.
But it was still important to get that feedback and to get those thoughts and make those learning for future projects, and to share that knowledge with other creatives, you know. So even though we couldn't change things and, you know, things were brought to our attention, it was a massive learning curve, wasn't it, for us all? And we're still going to be learning. We're still not going to probably, like we were talking about earlier, it's not going to be perfect. But I should talk a little bit about the other accessibility that we had as well, in terms of, you know, things like lower socioeconomic people, like underrepresented groups. We did make it our mission to make tickets. We did quite a few pay what you want shows. We also had, you know, really good relationship with venues to give out tickets to people that perhaps couldn't afford it. We tried really, really hard to reach underrepresented groups. It's very challenging, and it's probably something that, you know, we need to work on more going forwards, because we kind of relied on the venues to give us access to their communities. We had 5 venues in total. And we did bring on, you know, marketing and PR, but it just wasn't, looking back, we shouldn't have relied on the venues really, because the venues are at capacity. I don't know if you work with venues, but you know, they're really stretched in terms of people and power, and they just don't have the time. You know, that quite often you speak into venues and, you know, one person's doing 3 people's jobs, and so they just haven't got the time to do the outreach and stuff. So that's something that, as a producer, I want to work on going forwards, is outreach, not just to disabled communities, but to all underrepresented communities. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, so just going to quickly, and then we'll circle back basically. Yeah, some of the things that we just moved on the back of the Choosing Children, we ended up making a VR experience. And it's worth me saying that VR experience is not that accessible, because VR is so hard to do accessibly, right? So we'd gone from trying to make this incredibly accessible theatre show to making a VR experience, so we could basically give it a legacy afterwards. And, you know, there is a lot of challenges in VR, but it is a process which is getting better. So, for instance, in there is just captioning. And so you can integrate audio description, which we're in our next phase to try and do. But BSL is very difficult for us to get delivered within our depth capture that we chose to do. A long conversation can be had about that afterwards if you want. The app that we were talking about in the actual experience, the theatre experience, we are in the process of developing it so we can let other creators use it, because what we'd found is that a lot of the time people are having to work from scratch each time, trying to develop new technology to try and make it work in theatre, or it's technology which is not you know, accessible to indie creators. So we wanted to try and make something that we could distribute, seems as though we'd done most of the learning for it. And then the next thing we're doing is like a AR theatre experience, which uses a lot of the access features that we had in Choosing Children originally. I think that's it for me.
Yeah, we have gone through that very quickly, so please feel free to ask us any questions. Yeah.
Hi. I'm curious as to how it was received by the attendees.
Overall, really positive feedback. I think a lot of people hadn't seen anything like that before, so you know, it was quite positive. We did have one audience member say that it was the worst thing he'd ever seen. But I think that was more thematically than from access point of view. That was quite funny.
I'm glad how you picked that out as well.
Well, you know, we need to be open and honest. We're not going to please everybody, especially thematically what we were trying to say. It was our opening night as well, wasn't it? But no, like the feedback we got from, like I said, we did some offboarding, so we'd have conversations and we did post-it notes and allow people to write their thoughts. So if they didn't feel comfortable saying it out loud, they were given a space to write their thoughts down. So when I was putting the evaluation together for Arts Council, sort of, yeah, it was overall, yeah, really good. So,
I think like that was nice to see, like, get good. It's like a challenging subject, right? Like, I didn't really hold anything back in this. Like, I was like, you know, like I think about 4 minutes in, it's talking about like, you know, eugenics, and you know, it goes dark quite quick, right?
I asked you, would you change your unborn child?
Yeah, so
like that's like one of the first questions is, would you change your unborn child if you knew it had a disability? That is, it's hard. It's hard hitting.
It's not Bridgerton. It doesn't go like that easy. Like, you know, it's like we went hard at it, and I think like we had to take the audience with us, and then also that's why we built in the access. We knew that we were going to talk about a subject that was controversial, but also is relevant to a certain group of people, right? Like, it's, if you can do genetic screening, then it affects different people in the community, and we wanted to be able to try and reach out to that. I think from my perspective, the most disappointing thing was that we kind of built in a lot of access, but it's kind of unusual that that happens. So for instance, like, not a lot of the touring shows we were like in the same program as would have like BSL interpretation. So a lot of the venues wouldn't have that community of BSL users. So you're kind of having to generate all the time, and that is quite a lot of resource heavy work. And I think that's where you really want, and that's why we're really keen to try and share and make sure it's more accessible, because obviously if you can make more things accessible, you have a bigger community to go to. And if you've got something to talk about, which is what this work was about, critically thinking about this idea of genetic engineering, you really then can reach an audience more directly that are going to find it relevant. But I guess that's what our learning is into the next one. We're always trying to like build what a community is and try and work out what the outreach needs to be, because it's just the end result of just saying, oh, we're going to make this accessible with this set of access. Just isn't. It's a whole process that has to start really early on, and that's also building your community and building those people that eventually in 6 months' time are going to be able to come and see it.
It is challenging because we are such a small company. There is literally 3 of us. There's sort of like 4 of us that are doing the day-to-day work, all from very different, so we've got Adam he's the creative technologist who puts all this together, Matthias, creative producer, who kind of makes sure everything else is working, and then Ben's, the artistic, and I'm the producer. So it is... If you've got, more money, if we had more money, we would have been able to bring on more people to help with that side of things. But it's just something, this is information, it's good to pass on, because it's what we've learned is the more money you can put into it, the more expertise you can get, the more outreach you can get, the more marketing you can get. And, all of those things have to complement each other, because... if you focus on one thing, like just the accessibility, but actually, did we get what proportion of our audience was actually disabled? Do you know what I mean? You've got to balance it all out. And so I think, again, that from a producer's point of view, that's something I've kind of learned, that they all matter as much as each other. So hopefully next time.
Could I just ask another quick one? Is that okay? Just in relation to that, I'm working around interactive learning materials, so could that technology be utilised in a different space? If it was, for example, in an exhibition space?
Yeah, it can. Basically, it's just an application that allows you to integrate different types of access, and also we're trying to integrate basically live captioning and translation, because what we found, a lot of the issues we had is that, like I say, we'd put captioning into a show, or we'd have BSL, but no one in the venue would be able to use it. So you'd basically have to get, through simple text all the way through. But if we can have the application just allow some live text interaction, you will then be able to do a transition from the front door all the way through the performance and then out again, which is really what we want to be able to do. But yeah, chat to us after, I guess.
I think I was in the queue to ask a question. I'm wondering about this network for accessibility, because I work in that area too, and I feel like it's obviously you've not done it as an add-on, and you've done it right from the early stages with it absolutely at the core of your production. So I'm at the moment, I have worked in theatre previously, but at the moment I'm more on the VR and immersive side, and still you're getting productions where access is being thought about, but as a last thing, it's let's put the access in at the end. And I'm hoping to see access just more normalized, like it should be thought about. How do we build these networks so it's not tiny productions out on their own, with small budgets, it's like that is one of the challenges, isn't it? It's like how do we make it more central as an industry?
That's actually conversations we've had with Arts Council ourselves, isn't it? So, we were funded by Arts Council, and we've spoken to John, our area representative, about this sharing of knowledge. Nothing's actually come from that yet, but I agree with you. It's, people are going out and doing all these things, and if we could all share each other's knowledge a bit more, it would make everybody's lives a little bit easier, if that's what you mean by...
Yeah, it's that, and just how we change the culture around access as well, I think, with... some shows have to be separate because they've got specific access needs, but I just feel it should be more on the agenda than it is for everybody. And it's not like disabled people over there and sort of people without disabilities over here. It's like that sort of melding that needs to happen more, I feel.
Yeah, I agree, but I'd also say that the direction of travel is so much better. Like, I've been in this space like 15 years, and it's like, if over that period, the conversations that you would have, 15 years ago, you wouldn't be having now, like access providers are just more commonplace. So I think it is a bit of process, like trying to make sure that more people are talking about it all the time, and we are just trying to learn. It would be nice if there was more infrastructure around it, and I think there are a few things that are happening from the Arts Council, like All In, which is another thing they're trying to do about disabled audiences. So there are things happening. I guess what we really do is there's a load of disparate, so like people with different access needs are all disparate, right? They're all like all over the place and they're all different, and they're never really together, and we're trying to, got to come up with a better system. I don't know what that system is, but if you've got it, you can tell us.
I'm working on it, so I'll come and talk to you after.
Yeah, come and talk to us.
Because that's the thing I've noticed is the disparate groups, and also people with quite low self-esteem from not being listened to over and over and over again, and then a lot of lip service being paid, but the issues not really being solved. And obviously money and funding is one of them, but it's also how people are perceived and sort of, I hate to say it, but value of people, almost like your show was a little bit out, I think.
Yeah, a lot of it's attitude, right? It's just like, if you get a right attitude and you want to try and do stuff and make it inclusive, then, that's, for me, that's something that we're passionate about, right? It's like we generally want to do it. Like, it's not, like, it isn't an add-on for us. It's like, that is the core. Like, that's what we want to do. We want to make it accessible. We want to make it inclusive. And just as I've given in a 1 minute one, I kind of just have to keep saying this. I do take a lot of responsibility for all the areas where it isn't accessible. And I know that's just because, really, you just got to really understand as a creator that sometimes somebody else can do it better. Like, I know that this production, even though it had BSL, if a deaf director had taken this, it would be a better experience for deaf audiences. The budget didn't allow it, but it's just one of those processes you just have to accept. You have to know where your area and your specialism is and try and do your best in it, and try and share it just so that everyone else can have an opportunity to try and take from that learning.
Can I just ask a question that's a bit linked to that, which is on your slides you said about tapping into experts and communities. And when I kind of look, I do a bit of research online and I'm like so overwhelmed with, oh my God, where do I go? Because as you say, I'm not deaf or blind. And, from your experience, where have you gone to seek expertise?
Oh, good
what
question.
are your top tips?
Yeah, top tips for that. Okay. Well, you've got like your main people you can reach out to, and they probably can do better signposting. So like Grey Eye Theatre or Unlimited have a lot of good resources online. And then you've got like your kind of more specific access deliverers like Stage Text. And there's a lot of associations like Audio Description. I can't think what their association is, but you can find people that are registered there. So again, unfortunately, it is just a bit of like Google and hope. And like I say, it's like the information's out there, it's just difficult to access. Like that's probably our problem, right? Like we can't share this in one location where everyone can understand what it is. But I think, yeah, as long as you've got you can email us or email Laura, because I never answer my emails, but, you know, you can reach out to us. Oh, yeah. Okay, you can email Laura, and we will put out, we'll give you some...
Yeah, there's like obviously specialists in terms of the delivering of access, like we use Matchbox Cine for captioning, and but in terms of the consultancy before we started, I think it was I think that was before I even was on board, but it was people you knew, wasn't it? Or people that, if you know people or know someone that knows someone that knows someone even, just try and reach out that way. But again, maybe Arts Council, I don't know if they can help as well with that sort of thing, but...
Yeah, again, like if you go to the big players, they normally have something on their website because they usually get so many emails they don't want to answer them. But yeah, you reach out to us. Like I say, if you can, we'll help you out, and if not, we'll find out from the back of the room how to better signpost everyone else. So hopefully that will help. That's time. Thank you very much.
I think that's all. Yeah, thank you. We're going to be hanging around, so yeah, feel free to come and chat to us. Thanks.